Hello and welcome to this short video where we're going to be talking about endpoint assessment and specifically endpoint assessment for the Business Administrator Standard. So endpoint assessment is an independent assessment that takes place right at the end of your apprenticeship. It's a bit like a driving test, but for the knowledge and skills that you've developed right the way through your apprenticeship. So an independent assessor, someone who's had no contact with you right the way through the apprenticeship, is going to assess your knowledge, skills and behaviours that you've developed right the way through your learning on the apprenticeship, and is going to assess those according to criteria that are set out. So going back to the driving test analogy, you're doing your on-program training, which is like your driving lessons, and then when it comes to your driving test, someone that you've never met before comes along and assesses whether or not you're competent to drive. So for the Business Administrator Standard, this takes the format of a multiple choice question test, a portfolio-based interview, and a project presentation. So that multiple choice question test is 20% of the overall endpoint assessment grade. It's 60 minutes long, and it consists of 50 questions. So in order to pass that assessment, you need to get between 30 and 39 of those questions correct. And to get a distinction, you need to get over 40. For the portfolio-based interview, that's worth 40% of your overall endpoint assessment grade, and it takes between 30 and 45 minutes. So that portfolio, that should be 8 to 20 pieces of discrete evidence, and really the important thing to bear in mind here is that it's quality over quantity with these portfolios. So there should be real examples of your work. Evidence should be dated. And really, you should have a look at the assessment criteria and the standard, because these are available on the Institute for Apprenticeships website and in the guidance documents that we provide that are available through your training provider. And within those, we break down the assessment criteria for each of the specific assessments that take place as part of the endpoint assessment. So that portfolio should again be 8 to 20 pieces of discrete evidence that are mapped closely to the assessment criteria for the portfolio-based interview. And then once you've submitted that portfolio, which you'll do at Gateway, the interview will take place as part of the endpoint assessment. And that interview really validates the portfolio, and it gives you the opportunity to explain appropriate examples within it. And the endpoint assessor will be asking you questions about that portfolio. And a lot of the time that will take place through video conferencing. So it'll take place remotely using Zoom or Microsoft Teams. I think Microsoft Teams is our preferred platform, so that's often the one that we'll use. But it's just like a video call that I'm sure you've had before. The next assessment and the final one is the project presentation. So again, this carries 40% of the overall assessment grade. It's 10 to 15 minutes presenting, and then a further 10 to 15 minutes of questions and answers based on the content of the project. So this project should be completed from month 9 of your apprenticeship, and it should account for around 21 to 35 working hours. So you're going to use the project presentation to demonstrate how you approached a task and the skills that you showed in doing so, and building towards how you would improve the results going forward. And again, we've got guidance documents that lay out what goes into the presentation in quite a lot of detail and the kind of criteria that we're looking for. So I'd recommend really kind of taking advantage of that. So what are the kind of the top tips for success in endpoint assessment? Well, first of all, access and understand the standard, which is available on the Institute for Apprenticeships website, and also our guidance documents, which we have made available to your training provider. So understand the specific criteria that's being covered in each assessment. Each of the assessments aren't looking for all of the knowledge that you have gained throughout the apprenticeship. Instead, they're looking at specific parts. So the multiple choice question test is assessing different criteria to the portfolio-based interview, which is assessing different criteria to the project presentation. So have an understanding about where those kind of areas need to be met and in which assessment component. Next up, if you're including group work in the portfolio, remove others' names and make it clear what your contribution was. So it's really, really important that first of all, the evidence is dated so that we know that it's current evidence, but also it needs to be really, really clear what your contribution was. And that contribution, because we're assessing your contribution and your knowledge, skills, and behaviors. We're not assessing the success of a particular project or anything like that. It's really assessing the knowledge, skills, and behaviors that you've developed over the course of the apprenticeship, in line with the specific assessment criteria. And finally, be really familiar with your portfolio and the work that's in your portfolio. Again, make sure it's concise and quality over quantity. But because the interview is based on the evidence that's in that portfolio, it's really, really important that you're able to talk through and describe the kind of work that's included in it. And, the interviewer might ask questions to really kind of dig into the detail and give you an opportunity not only to validate the evidence that's in the portfolio, but also to expand on it and really, really demonstrate to that endpoint assessor that, yeah, this is my portfolio, this is what I've achieved over the past kind of duration, and this is what I'm really, really proud of what I've done. So that just about covers at a really, really high level what the endpoint assessment is for the Business Administrator Standard. Now, we do have those guidance documents and they do go into a lot more detail than this short video. So I'd recommend, familiarize yourself with the standard and the assessment plan, and also really have a look at the guidance documents to see what we're expecting. Thanks and best of luck.